Hi, folks. Welcome to Crisco's Corner. From Skinner News, over 40% of Democrats say they would support mass deportation poll fines. Now, that's almost half of Democrats. It's a huge percent for conservatives, Republicans, and independents. Nearly two-thirds of the respondents told the pollsters that illegal immigration is a real crisis, not a politically driven media narrative. Now, is it their fault that the Democrats let them in? And when they turned themselves in or were caught here illegally, they gave them green cards and gave them a court appearance date 4 or 5 years in advance? No. But they were used as pawns to change the demographic of the country. You don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to figure it out. Just say, well, don't punish them, John. The migrants, they're just doing what they can for a better life for themselves and their kids. But they were used by the Democrats, and you can't let your heart interfere with doing what is right. The Democrats cannot get away with this. Let's read on. The Axios Vibe survey by the Harris Poll found that 30% of Democrats and 46% of Republicans say they would end birthright citizenship. Now, it's in the Constitution. I believe it's the 14th Amendment. The amendment that the South after the Civil War said that the former slaves weren't citizens. Well, they made it so they were citizens, but that's not the problem. The problem was anybody born in the U.S. is automatically a citizen is not true. If you read the text of the amendment, it says only those born in the United States whose parent or parents is not subject to a foreign country. In other words, you cross the border and you're from, we'll say, Costa Rica, you're a Costa Rican citizen. And if you have a child here, they're still Costa Rican citizens. That's what the amendment says. But the Democrats have used the birthright citizenship like it's a law, and it's not. Trump recently promised to carry out the largest domestic deportation operation in American history if he is reelected. All of the ones that came across the border illegally did not come through a point of entry, have to go back to Mexico, the back to Mexico policy. And then each one of them will get an asylum hearing and determine if they can come here. Economic hardship is not a determination for migration and asylum. Americans are open to former President's harshest immigration plans, spurred on by a record surge of illegal border crossings and a relentless messaging war waged by Republicans, Axios said. It's not a messaging war, it's just telling the truth. President Biden is keenly aware of the crisis threatens his reelection. That's all he cares about. But the Democrats have to have these people in order to stay in power. He sought to flip the script by accusing Trump of sabotaging Congress's most conservative bipartisan immigration bill in decades. That's a lie. In that bill was money for more judges, more money for NGOs to help show people that are here illegally lie in court how to get citizenship when they don't deserve it. The report adds, but when it comes to blame, Biden so far has failed to shift the narrative because it's not true. 32% of respondents say his administration is the most responsible for the crisis, outranking any other political or structural factor. Yeah. So let's check out what a different article. Here we go to Fox, same thing. Nearly two-thirds of Americans believe illegal immigration is a real crisis. He's the most responsible, and that bill the Republicans said no to was a joke. It would give amnesty to almost everyone that entered the country unlawfully. It's like the Border Patrol agents now are like hotel desk clerks, and these people are checking in. It's disgusting. They cross the border illegally, they get into the country, then they go to a local, or they find local law enforcement that brings in the Border Patrol, and then they give them a green card and say, wait, here's a court date 5 years in advance. You're basically a hotel clerk. 7.2 million illegals entered the U.S. under the Biden administration, amount greater than a population of 36 different states. Let that sink in for a minute. Let that sink in. I think they're just sending a message to politicians. Get this under control. Chairman of the Harris Poll and former Clinton pollster Mark Penn told Axios, adding that the results could serve as a warning to Biden. Warning? It's like he's getting beat over the head with it. He's going like, what? Efforts to shift responsibility for the issue to Trump are not going to work. Yeah, because he's not responsible. Here's a picture here just recently in March, less than a month ago, of migrants, illegal migrants. I don't know why they don't put illegal in the description. Basically forcing themselves over through the National Guard of Texas. And here's the thing, after they were caught after, a judge has said, a federal judge, that they have to be released. This is the cancer in the rot that's going through our system, in this case, the judicial system. It's I don't know where to begin to clean this up, but we have to close the border and have people come through a port of entry like the law actually says. You can't just make up the law as we go along. And Mayorkas, of course, will not be impeached in the Senate because the Democrats made sure that the trial wouldn't happen in the Senate after he was impeached in the House. The Democrats didn't want more and more and more evidence of Mayorkas, his fundamental job performance. Looking for the right word for this. At Biden's, the Democrats' direction. Let's not kid ourselves. Joe Biden and whoever the real president is that's calling the shots is giving the orders. Both Biden and Trump have blamed each other for the ongoing border crisis. Well, Biden is to blame. Bills on border security remain tied up in Congress because they give too much money and amnesty, because they're rewarding the Democrats for breaking federal law by allowing them to come in unchecked. House GOP leaders are relying on Trump to take back the White House next year for any meaningful border policy changes to take place. Yeah, rightfully so. The poll found that 21% of Americans cited increased crime rates, drugs, and violence. Over 100,000 people have died in the United States in a year with a fentanyl crisis that's coming over the border. That alone should be enough. 18% said the additional cost of the taxpayers, and 17 cited a risk of terrorism and national security. Now, my father's parents were off the boat Italians, as they say. I'll tell you the difference than the changes that were made by Democrats now. You want to migrate here? I welcome you with open arms. Go through a port of entry, apply for it legally. A good friend of mine's wife is from another country. She had to go through the legal process. It takes a while because citizenship in the United States should be difficult to get. It's one of the most premier citizenships in the world. And those of you that scoff at that statement, the millions that have crossed the border illegally to get here to risk their lives, proves it. But this should not, my grandparents were not a burden on taxpayers. They came here and either stayed with relatives, friends, whatever it was when they got here, or they banded together and helped each other get through it. Now they're staying in first-class hotels while homeless people and homeless vets are sitting outside in tents on a sidewalk while the illegal migrants are sitting in first-class hotels. You tell me that's fair. You tell me that's fair to American citizens. Americans generally support legal immigration, as 58% support expanding legal pathways for orderly migration. 46% believe that asylum seekers should be protected if their cases are legitimate. But the problem is these NGOs that the federal government gives billions to has lawyers that teach them how to not tell the truth. The Axios poll was conducted online from March 29th through the 31st and in a couple of weeks in April. A Monmouth University poll released in February found 61% of Americans say illegal immigration is a very serious problem. The White House didn't immediately respond for a request to comment. Oh, no kidding. President Biden has repeatedly criticized the immigration system as broken. It's funny, before COVID, when the wall was being put up in the stay in Mexico policy, and President Trump made a deal with the Mexican president, now the Mexican president, who's a far lefty, says, give us $20 billion and we'll help you for these people not crossing the border. It's basically extortion. You know, and the newest bill is the toughest and fairest reform to secure the border we have in decades. That's a lie. That rhetoric was preposterous, and Biden owned the problem. This isn't about politics when Republicans said no, is what was in the bill. And I'm going to leave this picture here. These people basically steamrolled over these Texas National Guard troops. And then the federal government, federal judge later said you have to release them after they were caught. Do you think anywhere else in the world, you think the border of China would have these many people overwhelm their military or their version of the National Guard and get away with it without loss of life right there? Never happened. Try sneaking into Mexico and see what happens to you. You go to jail, and their jails are like the medieval jails. They are really bad. Try anywhere else. Anywhere else. Try sneaking in anywhere in Central South America unlawfully and see what happens. For some reason, we have to take the crap. We have to take the abuse of millions of people crossing unlawfully. We have federal laws that cover this. They should be enforced. We don't need new border laws. We have plenty on the books now that are more than fair. And the law of the land. But yet when they're ignored, well, we'll just make some new laws. Well, why don't you enforce the ones you already have? I used to say that when I was a city councilman in the early 2000s in upstate New York. Why do we need all this new legislation for? We just enforce the laws we already have. Well, we want to make it clearer. Yeah, the laws are clear enough already. They're clear enough already. They want to change the demographic of the country so they can have a permanent one-party system. It's really that simple. You don't have, like I said, you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes or a genius to figure it out. And now all these millions are in the country. How the hell are you going to get them out of here? I know President Eisenhower in the 50s deported millions. So did Obama. They used to call him the porter-in-chief. But all of a sudden, Trump is the bad guy. Trump got elected in 2016, and a huge issue at the time was immigration. And now it's 50 times worse. This issue alone is enough to sink Biden. I have no idea why he's as close in the polls as he is. They are filtering in our country and changing our society and our government, and it's wrong. That's why there's federal laws. I'm not asking to chastise people. I'm just asking them to follow the rules like everybody else did, like my grandparents did, my friend's wife did, and millions of others. I encourage immigration, but I encourage legal immigration. I don't encourage NGOs that get billions in our tax dollars to teach migrants how to lie so they can get asylum. Again, economic hardship in the country you're coming from is not a prerequisite for asylum. It's been standard for decades. We're going to see what happens. Because I'll tell you the truth, if Biden wins again, we're going to get twice as many. And as it comes closer to the election, it looks like Biden might lose. Look the hell out. Because there'll be hundreds of thousands crossing every month. It's a big turning point for us here in the United States. We're going to see what happens. Until the next time, God bless, goodbye, and good luck.